All right, it's finally time to start getting some of these new parts in preparation to reinstall the freshened up transmission. Starting with the rear main oil seal, we have to replace that before putting the new flywheel on. Now, if you're a ninja like me, you can just grab a wood screw and really carefully drill into the sheet metal framing of the old seal. This will give you a point to pry from. Some other more professional videos will probably tell you to take a small drill bit and pre-drill a hole before doing that carefully. You don't want to scratch the block at all while you're doing that. Then you grab a claw hammer, and if you're dumb like me, you just try ripping it out with the wood screw that you screwed in, and that doesn't really work, as you can see here. It just pulls it right out of the hole. So I went and grabbed a better screw with tighter threads, with a finer thread pitch, a little bit shorter of a screw, and threaded that into the same hole with a hand screwdriver there. And then I was able to get her out. At that point, you just want to kind of wipe everything out real good, maybe a little bit of brake clean. Something else you want to do before installing the new seal, I didn't show it here, but that's to take like some assembly lube or even just engine oil and apply it to the inner diameter of the new seal. So you take the old seal and put it over top of the new seal as something to sort of hammer on with your mallet so that you can kind of evenly drive the new seal into the bore there. Next, grab a socket extension and use that with your mallet to get it driven in the rest of the way. Just seat it down perfectly flush and even all around the outside of the engine block. And now you're ready to prep the new flywheel, starting with the pilot bearing. I just coat it with a thin coating of assembly lube on the outer diameter and use the appropriate sized socket to drive it in. You want to be careful to make sure it goes in evenly and seats flush with the hub of the flywheel. Once you have that in, you're going to want to drive the locator pins around the outside. You see there's 3 pins there, and you can just drive those in with a hammer. You can see I used a little bit of assembly lube on these pins as well to make it easier. And also I had to grab a used axle nut to place underneath the flywheel at each spot I was working on in order to prevent it from rocking back and forth while driving those pins all the way in. And there she is, ready for installation, ready for prime time, baby. Let's get her on the vehicle. Also worth mentioning is that it's a good idea to take your new clutch disc and slide it over the splines on the transmission to make sure that it actually goes smoothly. Otherwise, you'll want to make sure you clean those up. Now, back to getting that flywheel on. And this is simply a matter of kind of lining it up, getting it into position, lining up the holes in the hub with the holes in the crankshaft, and getting the bolts started by hand, of course, until all of them are in, and then torquing them down with a clicker torque wrench. So the important things here are to torque them down in a cross pattern, just like you would lug nuts, and make sure you get an assistant to hold the crankshaft rotation in position while you do this. It can just be somebody on the front of the engine with a ratchet or a breaker bar on the crankshaft pulley bolt. But anyway, if you fail to do those things, you could warp the flywheel, and you could also damage the engine by spinning it backwards. All right, we're almost there. We're going to take the clutch disc with the alignment tool and slide the end of that into the pilot bearing and sort of just try to get that centered and, seat it all the way down into the pilot bearing. And then, finally, we're going to put on the pressure plate. This can be a little tricky. Unfortunately, it wasn't easy to show here, so I have to tell you about it rather than show it to you. But I had a little bit of a hard time getting the pressure plate on and lining it up and getting it over all of the locator pins and getting all of the first 3 bolts, the ones near those locator pins, to all reach their threads. And this is really common with pressure plates, that you might have to get, in this case, I had to get a slightly longer bolt of the same size and thread pitch to suck the top in after getting the bottom one started, because I just wasn't able to get the factory bolt to reach the threads behind the pressure plate. Once those bottom ones were started, I couldn't put enough force by hand on the pressure plate to get that to reach. So basically, after sucking it in using that longer bolt, I put a couple other bolts near it, got them started to hold the top in, and then I was able to swap that back out for the appropriate factory bolt and torque them all down once again in a cross pattern, and with an assistant holding the crankshaft pulley bolt. And there she is, just screaming, "I'm ready for that transmission." And I'm like, hold on, got to put the turbo back on first.